Welcome to Negotiating Happiness, the show that helps you find happiness, success, and balance in your work and life. I'm Adriana, your host for this journey into entrepreneurship and personal growth. We're broadcasting live on 107.7 and 105.3 FM in New Orleans as part of the United Public Radio Network. We explore the latest strategies, insights, and stories from successful entrepreneurs and experts. From managing stress to building a thriving business, we've got you covered. Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome. Today is December 11th, 2023. We're almost at the end of the year. You are listening to Negotiating Happiness, and we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We are also on Roku TV. Check us out. And I can't wait to get started today. So grab your lunch, grab your coffee. I've got a super fun guest, Jen. Hello, Jen.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's good. It's Monday and I've had a crazy morning, but I'm here and I'm smiling and that's a win.
I love it. I love it. It's a little bit of tragedy in your voice there, but that's okay. It's a Monday, right?
Well, I don't want to gross anyone out with the story this morning. It was a little bit of an interesting drop off with some animal remnants that were left at my son's preschool. So there was some tragedy this morning. Yeah.
See, I knew it. So just to do a quick intro here, this is Jen Patterson. She is a money coach for Mompreneurs, and her business is called Dollar Divas, and you can find her at dollardivas.org. She helps entrepreneurs stabilize their cash flow without sacrificing business growth, and I can't wait to get into it today. So I, as I usually do, I went on Jen's website and I found a tidbit that she wrote about herself, and I really wanted to share it to everybody as an introduction because I thought it was super fun, right? How else are you going to get to know somebody than what they write about themselves in such a fun tone, right? So here's what Jen says on her website. She says, I was lucky enough to be raised in a house where money was discussed openly. My father was a successful psychologist and my mother was his right-hand man. In quotes. My first real job was running the office of the dance studio where I trained as a teenager. I very quickly became the right-hand man, quotes, to the studio owner. After I graduated from university, I got a job as a financial planner and found myself once again working with entrepreneurs. Over and over again, I worked with people who were amazing at their chosen trade, massage therapists, home stagers, and even lawyers. They all had the same story, loved their job, had no problem bringing in new clients, but they were not financially stable. These same business owners struggled to pay themselves a paycheck and keep the bills up to date. Why? This is the question that plagued me as a financial professional until I realized that most entrepreneurs are too busy doing what they love to deal with the nitty-gritty of running a business. That's when I realized what I needed to do. I loved sharing that because you started off from finding a problem and then you turned it into your own personal entrepreneurial journey, right? And that's exactly how I started. So that's why I wanted to share it word for word verbatim from your website.
It's so funny. I was like, where'd she find that? Because I wrote that so many years ago now.
It's definitely on your website, and I thought it was good. Great.
It's a great story because it's the truth.
Exactly. That's how I like to tell how I started this whole thing too. You find a problem and then you find a solution, then you're like, oh yeah, I am the solution, right?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about Dollar Divas.
Yeah, so Dollar Divas, Dollar Divas was born in 2012 and has gone through a myriad of different iterations over that time span. But the way it stands right now is Dollar Divas is a way for business owners, mostly mompreneurs, but that does not cut off anyone who's not a mom, don't you worry. We work with entrepreneurs. We teach them the nitty-gritty of running the business in a successful and a financially stable way. So, we find that so many entrepreneurs, they leave the 9-to-5 world only to work 60 plus hours a week, doing what they love, but we're always exhausted because our businesses are our babies. And yet so many entrepreneurs don't pay themselves a paycheck. They go without so often. And my job is to teach them how to grow their business, sink what they need to into the business so that it can be a thriving entity and yet still have that paycheck at the end of the day so that they can do things like pay their mortgage and buy food and, send their kids to activities and all of the other things that we do this job for. It's why we go into business. We want financial freedom. We want time freedom. We want to be independent. And so that is the piece of the puzzle that I bring to the table, is how to actually accomplish that without the endless hours of staring at spreadsheets and reading financial tables. Because I mean, I've got 3 businesses, 2 kids, a crazy dog, a household. Like, I don't have time to be, spending hours poring over spreadsheets and profit and loss statements. I love them, but I just don't have time for them. And so, like, what I do is about teaching things that are quick and intuitive, but also very effective.
That's right. That's awesome. And I mean, this mirrors a lot of our lives, right? We're busy, we have different hats that we have to wear every day. So um, I can see how this can definitely kind of be pushed to the side in order to just kind of stay afloat, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it happens all the time at tax season. My busy season is right after tax season, because
Right.
so many people will do their taxes. They'll get their, notice of assessments or whatever the American equivalent is, and they'll be like, "Hang on, I made a whole bunch of money. Where did it go?"
Right. Right. And it's like people don't realize how many options they have to minimize kind of the tax implications of things. And I always say, I'm like, that's the first thing you should do is one, get a good bookkeeper, to keep everything on top, and to get a professional that can teach you how to go about all of this stuff, right? And
Yeah.
here is the professional.
Well, and it's not only just like saving on taxes. I mean, obviously that is a big part of it. And, being best friends with your accountant, like, is a wonderful thing. I mean, not best friends, but like, you got to love your accountant and your bookkeeper. Like, they are, wonderful humans that need to be a part of your team. But it's also just like the day-to-day money that just sort of slips through the cracks, that, people don't pay attention to because they're so busy working on their business. They don't pay attention to those little details, and the money just slips through the cracks and disappears into the ether. And at the end of the day, they're like, well, where did that go? What did I spend it? What did I buy in this business? And, 9 times out of 10, they can't even remember what they spent the money on. And
Right.
yet it's not in their pocket anymore.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I've been there.
Oh, I've been
Full
there too.
disclosure, I've been there.
Yes, I mean, this is what I do for a living, and the half the reason why I know these things is because I've experienced them myself.
Exactly. Exactly. So are there any misconceptions regarding money coaching that you wanted to clear up? I always find that every time I bring in, somebody from a very niche kind of industry, there's always misconceptions that kind of float around.
I think the biggest misconception is that I'm going to tell you how to spend your money, and I'm going to tell you what's
Hmm.
right and what's wrong, and that it's going to be very restrictive, and that people are going to feel like they're closed in. And really, it's the opposite of that. What happens when you take control of your finances and you create a spending plan and you create what I call the bank account architecture is it actually opens you up and it gives you more freedom, and it allows you to take the second guessing out of the equation. So when you go to spend money on your business, if you want to expand, maybe open up a bigger shop, or if you want to hire a new marketing expert, or whatever. I mean, there's a million ways to grow a business. If you want to do that, you're not second guessing yourself thinking, can I actually afford this? Am I going to get myself into trouble in 6 months? All of these questions that come up when entrepreneurs go to reinvest in their business. This type of solution, this type of system completely eliminates that, because you know exactly where you stand no matter what is going on with you inside your head. You can look at your bank account architecture and know within seconds whether or not you have the cash to invest in this growth, or if you have the cash to give yourself a bonus or give yourself a raise, or hire a new assistant. Like, it's so much easier, and it provides more time freedom, and it provides more financial freedom, because you know exactly where you stand, and there's none of that, oh, I don't know. And then it also eliminates the need to constantly hustle for business and maybe take on
Right.
stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, but you feel like you have to do because you need the revenue.
I hate
Having a
that.
system like this will support avoiding all of that headache.
I hate that the one point you made about taking on business that you don't really want to do is actually more damaging than you think, and you have to kind of weigh it against, you know, the money that you're getting in versus the inconvenience and the setback that you experience from it. And a lot of people don't realize that. And like the more you fill up your time, and my business coach will 100% be like, you are in this position, and I am in this position. I was in this position. I've gotten better. I've like transitioned, but you literally fill up your time with the things that you shouldn't be doing, and that it does not allow you to grow, to open up time for the clients or the projects that you do want to be doing. And that's not to say that they are bad clients or that they're, you know, not not in, you know, a good position to be your clients. It's just that they don't focus on what it is that you want to do now with your business. So it's actually damaging long term to keep doing that. So it's such a good idea to get your finances in order before, so to basically prevent. I'm so glad you touched on that, because that's something that resonates with me so much.
Well, and also it's mentally damaging, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Like obviously, like there's the strategic part of it that you don't want to be taking on things that's going to damage your business strategically, but also if you are taking things on that you don't necessarily want to do or don't feel right to you, or sometimes even don't feel ethical to you, that's going to be damaging to you mentally as well. And all that's going to be is just a vicious cycle that's going to lead to more chaos, and then taking on more work because you feel like you have to hustle, and it's just going to lead you down a path that you really don't want to go down. I mean, again, we all started this because of that F word, that freedom word. We want the freedom, and
yeah.
we don't want to feel like we're handcuffed to taking on business that we don't feel good about.
That's right. And I love that you kind of went into the whole, you know, I'm not there to give you a list of do's and don'ts. I'm there to give you the structure so that you can naturally make better financial decisions without having somebody telling you, you really shouldn't be doing that. Right? So, from my understanding of what you just went through, it's like with my business, right? The moment you have the processes in place, everything just starts to flow naturally rather than, you know, you backtracking or panicking or making decisions last minute. You don't have that because it's the structure is already there in place. So it sets you up for the future rather than always trying to catch up, right? I
Well,
think we're all in this catch up everything all the time, you know?
you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because I just had a client that we went through. We set up her system, her architecture, and we went to go and allocate the revenue that she had ready to go. And she was like, okay, what do I do with this money? I've made some money. Like, what now? And I said, all right, let's allocate it out based on the plan that we've created for you, based on the structure that we've set up. And we went through and we did it. And she goes to me, that's it? Like, shouldn't this be harder? And I said, what do you mean, should it be harder? And she said, well, that was just so easy. I've never been proactive with my finances. I've always been reactive. And that is so stressful. Yet right now, I mean, here it is. It's in black and white. And I know exactly what I need to do. I know exactly how much business I need to take on or how much I can take on. And I know exactly when I'm getting paid and how much I'm getting paid. And she said, I've never experienced that in my adult life, like
Right.
not once. And it was really eye opening to me, because I've always been very type A and very much a planner. And so having someone kind of lay it out like that from their perspective really just brought home the fact that this is a really effective way of doing things. It really makes life easier. It takes away so much stress. So
Yeah.
much stress that the entrepreneur, the business owner can then really refocus and build the business that they originally intended to build.
Right. And I think this really comes from, again, depending on where you're listening in the world, right? You'd have a different experience. And I know we have a lot of listeners in Europe and Asia, and maybe they can, you know, tune in and let us know if it's anything different. But here in Canada, you don't necessarily get financial training in school at all, right? Or any financial knowledge. And I think that's such a mistake, right? Like it sets up everybody up to kind of be like, I've graduated and I'm a capable person. I've gone through all of these tests and exams, but yet I have no idea what taxes are. I have no idea what, how to set myself up for retirement. I have no idea how to like set up my future family for success. And there's still this taboo around talking about money, but I keep going online and reading these amazing stories about I say amazing, but maybe that's a little bit harsh with all these corporate companies that end up failing because of a silly mistake. They send out somebody's salary list and then it gets out that, so many people are getting screwed over so hard in the corporate world and putting in so much time, and they don't. I mean, nobody plans for that. Nobody plans for how to do it. But if you planned your business better, maybe you would have the capacity to give weight to how to treat your employees right, how to maintain them, how to not have a high turnover rate, and how to truly value the capital that they're putting into your business, right? This is not just about the solo entrepreneurs. Maybe, I work with people. I'm a one woman show, but I work with people and I appreciate them, and I'm always trying to think, hey, before I hire more or before I can do more, can I make things a little bit better so that these people end up sticking with me for longer? Because in the end, that's how you win this,
Mm-hmm.
right? In my head. But obviously, like the corporate world has different sort of ideas of how they win things, right? But it's just funny that nobody's taught about any of this. Even if you don't go on your own as an entrepreneur, the reason why I gave the example of the employees is like people don't even know how to negotiate their salaries. People don't even know how to approach the money subject with their employers. Like that's not okay, you know?
I always liken it to turning 16 and being handed the keys to a Ferrari, but
Mm-hmm.
not having any instruction. Somebody's probably going to do okay. Some people are going to muddle their way through, and some people are going to wrap that thing around a pole.
Right.
And that's essentially what happens with us as adults. We're handed the keys to something really powerful, our financial lives, and yet nobody's taking the time to say, here's how this works. Here's how to
Well,
do this effectively.
actually, the instruction that you're given is you're an adult now, so you should know how to use this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Without any prior knowledge, or you don't get primed for this. Do you know what I mean? So those are the expectations. Is you are 18 now, you are an adult, therefore all of a sudden overnight you need to know how to run your own life, and that's just not the case, and it really puts it into perspective as a parent of granted Zach is only 3, but I feel like I need to start a list of things that I need to bring up and that I need to teach him on top of schooling. And I am very grateful that we have free education. There are countries out there where you even need to pay to go, to primary school. I get it. I'm grateful for what we do get. And some of our university experiences are subsidized. Not all of them, not all the programs are. I get it. I'm not trying to be ungrateful for that. I'm just thinking that we can do better. I'm just thinking that we could, as a society, do better. But as a parent, it's up to you now, right? Like it's up to you to kind of instill that. And it's the same thing with, young entrepreneurs. Now that you're an adult, it's up to you. You don't no longer have, entrepreneurial parents unless you have coaches or mentors. Then it's their job to steer you in the right way, which is now like your job, right? But if I was on my own and didn't have any advice, it's now my job to figure out that I'm not the financial guru and that I do need help, and I need to find somebody like you who can explain the weeds to me, help me get out of the, this mess.
You know what? Here's the thing. I have a degree in economics. Like, I literally went to university and learned about money. Everything I teach came from my own experience and me figuring it out on my own. Because my
I'm not
degree in
shocked.
economics, I learned about supply and demand. I learned
Sure.
about the banking system. I learned about insurance, all of that stuff.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
spent years writing endless exams, and I could tell you just, all about GDP and all of that. I mean, it's been a while, but like I could probably figure it out again.
Sure.
However, like I said, every single thing in the coursework that I teach comes from my own experience and me doing it wrong for so many years and
Right.
failing so many times to find systems that worked. And that is what led me here, is my own like determination to find a way that was better than what I was finding on the internet. Because the advice that I see all the time, particularly in the financial sector, it all stems from a predictable paycheck. And it's like budgeting for employees. And don't get me wrong, that's important information, and people who have a 9 to 5 definitely need to like pay attention to their finances. But
Totally.
when it comes to being an entrepreneur, it doesn't work because you don't know what you're going to bring in every month. Like it could be thousands of dollars, or it could be hundreds of dollars, or it could be tens of thousands of dollars. And it varies so much depending on a million different factors. So having that like traditional budgeting advice just fail over and over and over and over again, I was like, okay, I gotta change this up. It's not working anymore. And that's how I landed where I did, was because I was just purely refusing to give up.
Which is, that's how all great entrepreneurial ideas start. It's from looking at the mold and saying the mold doesn't work for me. I'm going to create a new mold, right? And I love that. I love hearing that, because I think for people who are thinking of becoming entrepreneurs, they they hear a lot of no's and a lot of negative kind of, it's too risky. You don't have you can't just start overnight. You have to be safe and blah, blah, blah. So I love hearing that, because it stems out of the decision of, this doesn't work. I can figure out a way to do it better, and I can share it with the world, right? This is progress. No matter how you look at it, even if you fail, it's progress, because you've just taken off that option. It's been tested and it doesn't work, move on. That is still progress, right? Yeah. So I love it. I love to hear your outlook on this, because it totally encourages people that haven't started to be like, you know what, maybe my idea isn't that crazy. Maybe everybody's just scared.
Mm-hmm.
My question was gonna be, on this topic, what would be the best piece of advice that you could give to new entrepreneurs, like fresh?
Yes. You know what? This is perfect, because I literally started, I'm a little bit nuts, but I literally started a brand new business almost a year ago today.
Amazing.
I know. Yeah.
I need you to tell me about it.
So the backstory on the new business is, my family is plagued with celiac disease. And so for anyone who doesn't understand what that is, no way.
My dad,
worst club
yes.
ever.
Yeah.
And
the cookies aren't even good. The cookies are not even good.
Yes. And so anyone who doesn't know what celiac disease is, it means that we can't tolerate gluten. So gluten is in things like wheat, barley, oats. There's a myriad of different things. I can't remember the whole list off the top of my head, but we can't process most flour. And so my family lived on pierogies growing up. We are Ukrainian. We love pierogies. And let me tell you, the commercial gluten-free pierogies on the market are vile. they are just,
a lot of them are. A lot of products are
good. And so when we got diagnosed, my sister, who is more stubborn than I am, she went to work and she finally created a recipe for pierogies that was delicious, held together in the pot, and are just amazing. And when she moved out to Victoria, to sort of be nearer to family, I said, okay, like, we have got to start marketing these pierogies. Like, they are too good to just keep for ourselves. And so we did. And a year later, we are just like thriving. Our biggest issue at the moment, honestly, is we can't produce fast enough. So
I love those kinds of problems.
Yeah, it's a brilliant problem to have. And so, like, it's a brand new business, but it's doing great. And so it's been really exciting for me to take what I've learned from my coaching practice and apply it to a completely different business, because it's wildly different from my coaching practice. I mean, obviously, we have much higher expenses. We have physical product. Like, it's all super new to me. But I took my system and I applied it to the new business, and it has just flown beautifully. It's so easy. It's so straightforward. And it's something that I literally do in minutes a week to make sure that the finances for that businesses are just as solid as everything else. Right. And so, for anybody new in business, brand spanking new, the first thing I always say is you have to pay attention. Like no matter what stage of business you're at, and no
Yeah.
matter what your circumstances are, you have to pay attention to your money. If you're not paying attention, it's not going to be there to serve you. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is you have to make sure that your business and your personal dollars don't mix and mingle in the same accounts. So you've got to have
I feel
separate
attacked at
accounts.
this point. I feel attacked at this point because I make this mistake all the time. But go on.
The reason for that is it makes it so much harder on you when you go to do things like your taxes or to figure out if you're even profitable. You'd be amazed at how many businesses are not profitable and people are just digging themselves a bigger and bigger hole by staying in business. So it's really hard to figure that stuff out if you are not paying attention and you don't have it separated out. And to separate it out after the fact, you can do it, but a lot more wrinkles and a lot more gray hair come out of it. It's very messy. It's very time consuming and it's exhausting. You sound like you speak from experience.
I'm exhausted. I'm literally exhausted. Like I can give such great advice, but sometimes it's so hard to follow your own advice and I'm literally exhausted. This year has been wild for me with my like finances and bookkeeping and whatnot. Like it's wild and I can't agree more. Keep it separate. And actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about your structure, your architecture with this? Because I really want to know. I want people to get a taste of it, and I want people to know how they can get there with you and how they can work with you there.
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing I always like to remind people of is, especially when you're brand new in business, if it's a side hustle, things like that, everyone always thinks, oh, I need to go get like a business bank account, and those are expensive. Does not have to be a business bank account right away. It probably will later on down the road when you do things like incorporation or bring on partners. But day one, it just has to be a separate account. So a lot of places will allow you to have like multiple different accounts. You just have to ask.
I've said this from day one, and any client that's asked me, I've said this. It's so nice to feel validated from a professional. It's true. It's true. You don't need one.
No, you absolutely do not. If you look at like my banking, especially for the new business, like it's comical because there's a list of bank accounts a mile long. Like my husband looks at it and he's like, "How is that helpful?" I'm like, "Just trust me, it is." Because it's all laid out. It's like that really beautifully organized sock drawer with all the little things. You see the things. You're all the little compartments. You see exactly where you stand. You know how many socks you have left. It's the same thing with your money. If it's all divided out, then you see where you stand. So keeping it separate from your personal is step 1. Step 2 is creating what I call the architecture. And that's that like sock organization for your money. So I always like to suggest at the bare minimum of like 3 different accounts. So you've got one account where all the money just goes into. That is its only job. I call it the deposit account. You can call it your catch-all, your money inbox, whatever. It's just because there's so many different ways that we get paid these days with like PayPal and Venmo and Square and Stripe, and there's just 1,000. And even with one tiny little business, we get money from so many different avenues. And so it all goes into the central account. And then once a week, I go in and I divide that account into the other accounts. So the other accounts that, I recommend for everybody is a tax account and an expense account. That's very basic. Beyond that, the sky's the limit. I've had clients with like 12 different bank accounts, all with different jobs to do. But that's just how their brain works. Whereas I've got other clients with 3 because that's how their brain works. And so it's a matter of creating the system that you understand. It's not what I think you should do or what, Adriana thinks you should do. It's what you understand and how you run your business. So like for the pierogi business, we have an expense account. We have what I call the growth account. So that's where we put money aside so that we can reinvest. This summer, we bought a really beautiful tent. Over the winter, we upgraded our freezers, just a little bit of money put aside so that when we need to reinvest in the business or we want to reinvest in the business, the cash is just sitting there and it's like ready to go. We don't have to go, got to go sell a whole bunch of stuff so that we can make money to buy this thing because we've already been putting it aside all along.
Right.
We've got a tax account and we've got an emergency fund for, I don't know what's going to go wrong. I don't know when it's going to go wrong, but what's going to help make it better? Money.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Right. And it's so like I have what I call my revenue allocator and it's based on percentage. So I don't use a budget. I allocate my revenue based on percentage because I've always going to have 100%. I'm never going to have, $3,000 exactly. That's never going to happen. And so trying to budget using that just makes your life harder. Whereas if you use 100%, you always have 100%, whether you made $1 or $100,000. It's always 100%.
So it's easier to balance. That's so true. That's so true. I've done the whole budget thing, and it's like a disaster, and it fails very quickly.
Yes, it does. Because you have one of two problems. You either have cash you don't know what to do with, which is actually a problem because then people feel like, oh my God, what do I do with this money? I don't know where I'm supposed to put it.
Floats away
and then it
being
just
used.
Disappears out of your fingers. Or the other problem that we all seem to know and love is you don't have enough to fill the budget, and then you have to figure out where to make cuts. And that's really hard as well. Yeah. So using the percentage system, it makes it so much easier. You just go in, okay, 30% is going to my paycheck, 20% is going to operating expenses, 5% is going to emergency fund, 15% is going to taxes, done. Like, I don't know if that's 100%, but I was just spewing off numbers off the top of my head. Yeah. Totally. And the tool that I use, it is a spreadsheet. I know I'm sort of like the anti-spreadsheet girl, but it is the one and only that I use, and it's very user-friendly.
I'm the anti-spreadsheet girl, and I still have to use them.
We do have the one, and it's very user-friendly, and it's got a lot of pretty pictures on it. So, I like to think that it's not really a spreadsheet, but it does all the math for you. And all you got to do is then just go into your accounts and hit transfer. And done. I'm not even joking. It takes about 5 minutes when you get good at it. The first time, it probably take you about 10 or 15 because you're just kind of figuring out the kinks. But like literally, I did an allocation the other day. It took me 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, cool. Paid my bills. Amazing. And I was done.
That's amazing. That's something that I think everybody needs is clarity on where everything is going. I am the worst for this. And I tried budgeting too. And again, when you do it with a number, it doesn't work. Now, the other problem is the steady part, right? So this makes sense because if you're getting, let's say I'm just pulling numbers out of nowhere. Let's say you get 20,000 one month, and then one month you only get like 6,000, right? It works because it's a percentage. Now, the problem is how do you kind of connect the gap? How do you make it steady, right?
So yes.
So I do have to do a really quick intro, and then we're going to get into that. So for anybody that is tuning in, you're tuning into Negotiating Happiness, and I'm your host, Adriana Fierstro, and I'm here today with the wonderful Jen Patterson, who is a money coach for entrepreneurs, and she specializes in working with mom entrepreneurs, but it's only one facet. She can help everybody. We are just talking about how to budget accordingly and how to create a structure that will make it easy for you to stay on top of your money so that you don't have to make rash decisions, right? And how to set yourself up for growth. And we are live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And we are streaming live on pretty much every platform there is, either live or you'll find us on a replay. So give us a like, leave us a comment. We do respond to our questions and feature comments. If you want to get involved, please do so. So let's dive right back in here. Jen, take it away.
All right, creating that steady paycheck. So I always call it the 9-to-5 paycheck without the 9-to-5 lifestyle.
Yes.
That's the question on everyone's mind, is how do I manufacture that? And it's not as hard as you think. So let's use your example of the 10 and the 6, okay? So what I always like to suggest is within your bank account architecture, once you're sort of past the 0 months, like, when you brand new get started, you have those months when you're like, I made no sales. Cool. Once you're past that threshold, that's when you can start setting up that steady paycheck. And it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen overnight. Sorry to be a bit of a disappointment there.
But what does in entrepreneurship, though? Let's be honest. What happens overnight?
Honestly,
nothing happens overnight. No.
Yeah, nothing happens overnight. So, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some effort, but it's actually very simple. So you have a separate bank account that is just for your paycheck. That's its only job, is to hold the money you pay yourself with. And you set aside a certain percentage of your revenue and put it into that bank account. Now, instead of clearing out that bank account every time you go to pay yourself, take out about 80%. And then what's going to happen is you're going to build up a little nest egg. And then you can treat that bank account like a well, like a water well, like the old school water well, wishing wells, we all can picture in our heads. And then when it rains, that well will fill. And then when you have a dry month, or, you get sick, you go on maternity leave, whatever, that well will be there to continue paying that steady paycheck, even if the revenue's not there.
Right. Because
Even
you've
if
been building
you're,
it.
yeah, even if you are not working in your business, or having like a bit of a month, or you're restructuring or whatever, that revenue, that money that you put aside in that paycheck account will still be there to pay you out that steady salary, even if the revenue is not there. And then you can take the time and go, okay, how do I want to now bring in more revenue to my business? And you can be strategic, you can be comfortable with it, and it eliminates that hustle need, because the money's there. The money's already there for you. It's supporting you. It's there.
Right.
I can't think of another word, but it's literally, it's just there.
It's there as long as you don't do what I do and keep going back into that account. But if you use Jen methods, you would have separate accounts that you can touch. That one is a non-touch account. That is the deposit account. Let's make that clear. Don't do what I do. Do as I say, not as I do, right?
Yeah. And you know what? The thing is it's going to be messy. It's going to be messy.
Yeah.
I always like to sort of think about, like, when you're cleaning your house and you pull everything out and you're sitting in the middle of a chaos and you're like mid-project regret syndrome. Like, we've all been there. And it's the same thing with your finances, right? Like, it's not going to be a steady straight line that's going to go perfectly. It's going to be messy. You're going to have things that come up. You're going to make mistakes along the way. But the important thing is creating habits that support you and support your finances and support your business, checking in on a weekly basis so that you're not leaving it 3 and 4 weeks and going, oh my gosh, and then making panic decisions, checking in once a week. All of those systems are there to support you, and it will happen. I would say on average, to create that like real steady 9 to 5 takes about a year. Right. If you are doing it consistently. I've seen people do it in 3 months. I've seen people do it in 6 months, but on average, I'd say it takes about a year.
That's amazing. Yeah, because that's probably one of the most encountered comments that people make to people who want to become entrepreneurs is like, how do you handle the, not having a consistent paycheck? But it's, I want to say it's a trade-off, but it's not. What you're saying is you can have it all. You can have the freedom, you can have your business, but you can also like organize it in a way that you have that steady paycheck. So you don't have to say the freedom is worth the not having a clear financial path. And it's true. You just have to put in the work. So what kind of homework do you usually recommend for entrepreneurs that need to get in a better money mindset?
Oh, money mindset. That's a whole other, we could have another hour-long conversation about just that.
You'll have to come back on. I know.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm a big believer that you can't have mindset without strategy, and you can't have strategy without mindset. So anyone who tells you that finances is 99.9% mindset is full of hooey, because if you just sit on your couch and think nice thoughts, good things are not going to happen. You have to get up off your butt and do things.
I think that's the manifesting thing that's happening right now. Everybody on Instagram is just manifesting money from everywhere. And I have so many thoughts about this. And like, I agree with you. There has to be some strategy. And at the same time, like, I love me some spirituality and I love me some like connecting it with science. I really do think that, manifesting is just how to reorganize our brain in order to think in a way that helps us succeed. That's what it means to me. But what you're describing is the whole like trend on like Instagram of manifest yourself to like $1 million. Like, that doesn't work like that. Like, there has to be some real work that gets put in there in order for that to work. Am I right? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. And on this flip side, if all you focus on is strategy, but inside your head you're thinking, I'm a failure, I'm never going to be successful, I'm broke, blah, 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 then guess what? You're going to be broke. You're not going to succeed.
Limitation. It's a
because
limitation.
All you're going to look for is the failure, and that's all you're going to see.
Yeah.
So you can't have one without the other. They must work interdependently for you to be truly successful. So that's the first thing that you must get your head wrapped around if you really want to move the needle forward. So if you're doing homework on mindset, the first thing I always like to look for is your language. Like, how do you speak about money? What is your internal thoughts about money? Like, how do you feel when you open up your bank account? Do you avoid looking at your bank account? Is
Yes.
that something that happens? Are you the one that's like, oh, I don't want to look at my app. Oh, it's scary. And do you avoid opening that mail, emails, whatever? Like,
Yeah.
is that something that you strategically or subconsciously avoid in your life? So what is the language you're using? Do you find that you're saying things like, I'm broke, I hate money, oh my gosh, if only I was a millionaire, blah 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 blah? Those
Yeah.
are the things that you can change really really quickly and can make a shocking difference in your mindset. So one of the things I always like to say is you can't go from I'm broke to I'm wealthy, because there's always going to be that little voice in the back of your head that says, nah, no, you're not. And
Yeah.
so instead of trying to like completely do a 180, just take a baby step. Instead of I'm broke, it's like I'm working on getting myself more financially secure. I'm working at it. I'm trying to be more successful. I'm trying to get myself out of debt. And those are the things that are going to start being, believable. Your brain is not going to, second guess that, because it's like, okay, you're working on it. It's not perfect. And guess what? You're never going to be perfect. So give up that dream. But like, you can convince yourself that you're working on it. And so if you catch yourself saying those things, and they're so prevalent in our society, I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Being bad with money is considered like fun and cute, which I find just gross.
Right.
But
I tried to make it cute to make myself feel better, but I acknowledge that this is when, as a responsible person, entrepreneur, this is when you reach out to get help, because you can get out of that. That's not a sustainable way of living. I'm telling you right now, it is not sustainable. But it's true. It's used for comedy. It's used for content, for entertainment. Like, but what people forget is that the people that make those types of videos are getting paid to make those types of videos. So it's actually kind of ironic if you think
mhm.
about it,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I saw a meme the other day, and it was a little picture of Baby Yoda or Grogu, whatever you want to call him, and the line was, where do you keep your money? In my memories. And it was like, okay, it's good for a chuckle. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually posted it because I
Yeah.
was like, this is funny. But
Yeah.
then then there was the diatribe afterward about being like, okay, this is funny in a moment, but if this is how you're thinking about money on a daily basis, that's going to do you a
It's
disservice.
not sustainable. I think
It's
I
not.
think long term people need to start thinking more long term. But you're right. There is a whole trend of like, oh, it's funny when you're broke, or actually prime example, students. Being a student is always kind of classified as like, oh, like you eat ramen noodles and you don't have money to do anything. Somehow they still end up like going to like parties or concerts or whatever. So you always do that. But I mean, I'll take my brother for example. My brother is a really smart kid. He's a kid. He's 20s now, but he's a really smart kid, and he made it through a whole engineering degree, and he had co-ops that paid money, and I understand that there is privilege involved. He had the privilege of being able to go to school, but he paid for his own school. Like, he was able to make that happen and not have debt. And how did that happen? Yes, like parents helped. I basically taught him what to do from me making those mistakes. I graduated with a ton of debt, right? So it is possible to kind of break away those ideas and molds and still be, normal, have a normal life, but also make really good decisions so that you can set yourself up for better. So yeah, while we joke about, you're a broke student, don't take that through your life. Don't make that your part of your personality. And sometimes I say it as like a coping mechanism, but don't get me wrong. Like it took me a really long time to change exactly what you mentioned, which is how you talk about it, what you put out there, what you put out into the world. So I tried to move from the negative to a positive statement. And I'm not just talking about, like, an easy way to do it is to not include a not or so instead of saying, I don't have money, I will say something like, I have some money, but I will be working on getting more. Like you just kind of shift it, right? You shift
Hmm.
it into something that's more positive. They mean the same thing, really,
Hmm.
right? First eliminate the negative words out of there, and then eliminate words like broke, and you know,
Here's a big one. I can't afford it.
ah, yeah,
That's a huge one. So one of the things like this comes up with my kids all the time. They'll, say things like, "Well, can we go to Disneyland tomorrow?" And I'm like, "That wouldn't that be great?" And I'll say, "Well, like, you know what, guys? We're choosing to spend our resources somewhere else right now."
yeah,
And like because that's more accurate than saying, "Oh, well, we can't afford it."
yeah.
Like it's saying we could take 5 grand and disappear to Disneyland, but instead we're gonna pay the mortgage.
Right, and you're also teaching them priorities, because for kids, hearing no, it's not it's hard when they just hear no, we can't.
Yeah.
It's different when they hear, well, we have to take that money and use it for things that will, sustain us for the next couple of months, right? So then they're like, oh, why do we have to do that? Like in their heads, they absorb so much that they're already thinking about why, and they will regurgitate that information to you later,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Like I already see it with my 3-year-old, things that I tell him like, 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you remembered that. Right. So it's such a good teaching moment for parents too. Like when you restructure the way that you talk about money, try and instill that in your kids too, because right now they're blank slates. Like this is like perfect timing to teach them how to look at money, right? I maybe sometimes have more like liberal, free flowing thinking of money, like thoughts of money, like, you know what, money flows. That's how what I always think about. It'll go in and out, in and out, in and out, and that has helped me create more for myself, but it has not helped me curb in my expenses. So there's good and bad with that, right? I'm just kind of like, oh, whatever, I can always make more money, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I am close to being burnt out, and I'm like, yeah, I could make more money, but the issue is like, how do you do that in like smart way? Work less but still make more, you know what I mean? So there's just so many facets of this that it definitely warrants more than one conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. A person can study finances and money for every waking hour of their entire lives and just crack the surface. Like
Yeah,
money is such a huge topic. And even within ourselves, I mean, dealing with your money mindset, this is something that I always like to remind people. It's not something you can tick off a list. It's not something you can be like, nope, check, done money mindset. All right, moving on, next thing, because it's directly linked to everything. The computers that we're on, the microphones we're using, the internet connection that we are using to talk to one another, all of these things are touched by money. And so it is directly linked to our survival. It is directly linked to our everyday existence. We touch it all the time. And so saying that like my money mindset is done is not something that you're ever going to be able to say, because
no,
you're always going to find new things that are going to come up after you've tackled the other ones. And sometimes that can be a little daunting, but it's also kind of freeing because you can just sort of say, well, okay, I'm always going to be working on it. It's just going to be a part of my life, and I can let go of being perfect. And
yeah.
there's always something more to learn. And that's, I always think that's kind of fun and exciting.
I think so too, and I have the perfect example in an entrepreneurial context as well. Think of all of the big brands that didn't have a website before COVID, that have been in business for, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years, that basically thought that they were untouchable, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden you have no way to get your product or your service to the public, and then they got hit really, really badly. And it's like, because you didn't plan ahead, because it's not like the internet or the .com era started when COVID hit. No, that started like 20 years before that, right? And you did nothing about it for your business. Then it's the same thing. It's about, how do I ensure that money keeps flowing and that money makes sense, right? And they didn't do that. They didn't cover a huge portion of our changing society. So of course there isn't a check, I am now certified and I have the best money mindset ever. There's no way, because our world is continuously changing and flowing, and how would money not change, right? Look at all the marketing books that were written in the 80s that now don't make any sense because the way that we do marketing now is so different, right? It's the
Yes.
exact same thing with money, right?
Well, and
Because
I love that you brought up COVID and all of that, because that, also reminds me of just how important it is to be on top of your finances, to make sure that you've got a financially stable company, because I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. You don't know what's coming down the pipeline. None of us saw COVID coming, and yet it presented itself, and a lot of companies didn't make it because they were sort of that paycheck to paycheck, and they were, just walking that fine line. And so they didn't make it because they didn't have the financial backing to weather the storm that no one saw coming. And,
no.
like I've said it time and time again, I don't know what's going to go wrong. I don't know when it's going to go wrong, but something's going to go sideways in your business. And you need to be prepared for that. And
Like unless
financial
you're
stability is how you do it.
right, and unless you're Amazon that has like an unlimited amount of resources, right? That's when they're like if you look at their stocks boomed in during COVID because they were the only, well, one of the only ones that were able to adapt so quickly because why? You throw money at a problem, you make it happen, you get more delivery drivers, you get more systems in place, you keep on top of ordering. That now just probably quadrupled because nobody can get to a store, right? But we, unfortunately, the little guys, us, we are not Amazon. We don't have that. But if you plan accordingly, you at least have that emergency fund. You at least have that chunk of money that you can reinvest back in your business because that could be the difference between, you know,
Making it
dying
and not making
and
it.
making it. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
here's the other thing, like the other thing I want to remind people of is there's no such thing as too big to fail.
Right.
Like let's take Amazon. Amazon's a great example of this. What would happen to Amazon if suddenly tomorrow the internet wasn't a thing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but stranger
No.
things, right? Like stranger things have happened. And
And
so there's no such thing as too big to fail. I mean, we think
no.
about like the 2008 financial crisis and all of those, big, huge institutions that went belly up because they didn't.
And think about it. Amazon isn't just relying on its marketplace. Amazon has a ton of companies. Amazon has KDP for publishing. Amazon has music. Amazon has TV, like for streaming. But they all depend on the internet, right? Do I think that Amazon has other businesses that I don't even know about? For sure. For
Mhm.
sure. He's a smart guy. There's no way that he's not finding ways to make more money with the sickening amount of money that he already has, right? But I'm just saying you could be diversified and you could be, and every single one will fail if something catastrophic like that happens. And I know that everyone's like, oh my God, that'll never happen. Really? Because we didn't think that we were going to get locked down and not able to see our family because we live, where we live, but yet it happened and you just kind of have to like adjust. Yeah, no, it totally puts planning into perspective even more after what we've just gone through. But on the positive side, there are so many entrepreneurs who decided that like, hey, it can't get any worse than this, so I might as well just go for it, right?
Yeah.
It totally did. So we're getting close here for our time, but I want to know what makes Jen happy? Not, entrepreneur Jen, or maybe it's all at the same time. Mom, partner, friend, sibling, entrepreneur. What makes you happy? Like what makes this balance out for you? The ups and downs and the like what do you like to do?
Honestly, I'm sort of a little old lady.
Perfect.
I love tea and puzzles and crocheting. Like those are the things that I
I
do
love
in the
it.
evening when it's like, okay, the kids are in bed and this is mama time. Like I literally make a cup of tea, I break out my puzzle or my crochet project, and that is the thing that like brings me joy. That and the other thing that I do, which is not an old lady thing, but I play fast pitch with an amazing,
Amazing.
amazing group of women that just bring me so much joy. and I love that. And we work out in the off season together, and they're my family. Like, they're not just my friends, they're my family.
Yeah, but you have the flexibility to do that. You have the flexibility to act your age and to act like quote unquote an old lady because you get to make your own schedule. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Do you like to travel? Do your kids often bug you about Disneyland?
Well, okay, I will admit that I am a certified Disney adult, and I will go to Disney.
Amazing.
I'm not even joking, you guys. I have an account in my business architecture that says Disney. And whenever there's enough money in there, guess where I'm going?
Oh my
Um,
God. I
yeah.
love it.
So when
I
I
should have
say,
that for travel. Oh my
yes,
God, I'm
when
gonna
I
do
say
that.
it's up to you how you manage your finances, I truly mean that. Because obviously, I'm not going to tell everybody to have an account that's called Disney. Like, that's insane. But,
But
you know,
travel, I
but,
feel like that
if
would resonate with a lot of
yes, like, if
entrepreneurs.
you literally want to take some of your money and put it on travel, like, I've had at least 4 clients that literally off the top of my head, I can think of 4 faces that have travel accounts in their architecture because they love it so much. And so I was like, well, then cool. Like, let's put a bank account in your architecture and
Right.
siphon some money off. Like, I had one client who was, a little bit newer in business, so they only siphoned off like 2 or 3%, and I had another one who was putting like 8% of their revenue into travel, and like they were making good bank. And so, I mean, they within the time they worked together, which is usually about 3 months, they were like, "Oh, I booked a trip with my travel money." I was like, "That's amazing!" Like,
Yeah. And that's also a really good way to do it if you are, let's say you're a proprietorship, so you're not really drawing a salary. You have to like artificially draw it, and you don't have kind of a set like vacation time. So you can have an account where you can save for your time where you're not working because I don't know if you're like me, if I'm not working, I'm not making money, right? But if I have a vacation account, then I know that I can dip into that if I need it while I'm not working, right?
yeah,
So that's such a great way to look at it. And also, I'm sure Jen can tell you this also, but there are savings accounts that have sub accounts. So even if you don't open a million accounts, you can open one that has like 5 or 6 different kind of subcategories,
yeah.
but that will keep your money separate as well.
Mhm.
So,
There's
I,
lots of different ways to do it. And,
yeah.
that's one of the things that I always like to walk through with my clients, hold their hands through the process, because it can be really overwhelming, like picking a bank.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, switching banks is a big pain in the butt, but it sometimes can be really worth it. I had a client just recently that was feeling really like stuck in her business, and literally just the process of switching to a new bank just opened up the world for her. And it would seem
Yep.
so silly and trivial, but she just felt like the previous bank wasn't serving her in the way that she wanted, and she felt like she always had to like kind of do things but not quite the way she wanted, and it was always very like kind of band-aid
Yep.
solutions. And so I was like, well, like, why are you still there? And she said, well, because I've always banked there. And I was like, that's silly.
It's not a
Let's
good
find you
enough
a new
reason.
one that was going to serve you better. And we did. And
Yeah.
it literally was the catalyst for a huge wave of change, because
Yeah.
that was where she was stuck. And
Yeah.
so, like, walking through the process of finding, either communicating with your bank on what you want to do, or finding a new one, that's something that I help a lot of my clients through, which can be a really big sticking point because it can be overwhelming. There's so many options out there, and a lot of people find their banks kind of intimidating.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, they're just giant, institution that handle all of the finances. They are the ones with the power. So of course people find it intimidating. But this was so great, Jen. Thank you so much. We are now nearing our time. You should definitely come back on. I had so many more questions. I was going to ask you all about, what advice do you give people that want to scale? And I mean, we could probably dissect so much more. So definitely would love to have you on next year as well. I hope you enjoyed this.
I had so much
And
fun.
yeah, so everybody check her out if you want to go on Instagram. She is at Jen Patterson with 1t.biz, and or www.dollardivas.org. You can connect with Jen there too. I think we need to have you back on so we could talk about some of your, upcoming projects, and maybe we could talk about your other businesses as well, because I'd definitely like to learn more about that. Okay,
That
so
sounds
thank you
great.
so much. And for everybody that tuned in, if you have any questions after we are live, please feel free to keep them, put them in the comments, especially on my personal accounts as well, because I will be able to see the notifications and I will get back to you if I see it. And thank you all for tuning into the show, and thank you to the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network. Thank you for basically providing us with the platform. We will see you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week.